Back in the 1990s, there was a group of Celtic fans, a little band of merry men called Cels, and they basically wanted to make sure that Celtic was saved from the families that owned them at the time. A bit like what Celtic is now. It's owned by three families. One family is pretty much dominant, and the other two families are two Scottish guys that own roughly about 26 to 27 million pounds worth of shares in Celtic. And those two Scottish guys never have anything to do with Celtic. They never have anything to do with the running of the club. And people should be asking why. And then why you have one family who has 49% of the shares, and then you have another family at Celtic that basically much runs the club as they please. The Saviour Celts disbanded as they felt they weren't getting anywhere back in the day. I mean, I was only young at the time. I was in my early 20s. But then that was preceded by a group of Celtic fans called Celts for Change. And Celts for Change were all about making sure that it was in the headlines, that it was widely known that Celtic fans wanted change. How do Celtic fans do that in this day and age? And there's social media and there's platforms like this, and there's Instagram, and there's YouTube, and there's Twitter. And you have Celtic Ultras who's put out a banner yesterday and said that it's basically, it was on the board's head, this one. Which led to me taking it to Twitter, and I found a really good thread where it said, all the Brendan haters out there in force are refusing to understand that this is all on the board. And one reply says, how do you explain drop points to bottom six sides who are on terrible runs of form until they play us? The board are what they are. And you can say the board has been successful over the last 20 years if you look at the amount of things that we've won, but you can't keep on doing that. And just look at Manchester United in England. It was called the Sir Alex Ferguson League, as far as I'm concerned, that they went on a fantastic run, and they pretty much dominated that league for years. And, we thought when the 10 in a row came and went and we didn't win that, we thought, yeah, maybe the times are changing. Maybe we're not going to be as dominant. And then in comes an Australian manager who kind of turns things on his head. And we also had a CEO at the time who I thought was going to be a bit different. He wasn't a football guy. He came from out with football, and he wasn't one of the family. Let's face facts. He wasn't one of the family, and he was chased out of Celtic Park as quick as his feet could touch the ground and say Ange Postecoglou. He was chased out of Celtic Park because he wasn't one of the boys. He wasn't one of the boys. A lot of people are having a right good old dig at Brendan Rodgers, saying it's basically Brendan Rodgers' fault. When you look back to last season, last February, the football wasn't any better. Teams were starting to sit in, teams were doing this low block, and it's up to a good manager to change the system and try and pull teams out. And it's not the easiest thing to do. We have been pretty much crap since last February, as someone pointed out to me. And but other people are saying, look, there's not a single player that has improved under Brendan Rodgers. He has to be held accountable for that. There's only two players that we know that are definite Brendan Rodgers signings, and that's the two players that have came in the last 3 or 4 weeks. All the other signings from last summer were all Ange Postecoglou's signings and the board. Is it time for Peter Lawwell and his son to depart Celtic for good? And for all the good that Peter has done over the years, he's done a lot of damage to the club. And he has done a lot of damage to the club. And we can go back to Brendan's first time here. The failure to get McGinn from Hibs was detriment to the reason that the manager left the first time. Will it be detriment to, this transfer window be detriment to the reason that he leaves this time? People are saying that, look, they wouldn't mind if he left this time. And if he left and called out the board and called out the Lawwells and maybe brought down the Lawwells with him, would be fantastic, a lot of people are saying. Let's listen to what Brendan Rodgers had to say on the game yesterday, because this is probably one of the most important parts of the video.
Yeah, well, 2 points dropped. Of course, you come to here, we expect to win. Done okay in the first half, created opportunities, didn't take our chances, good chances, and you could see Aberdeen probably lacking that confidence, but of course the longer it goes on and then they get the lead, that gives them that little bit of impetus. So second half I didn't think we were aggressive enough with and without the ball. Aberdeen's threat was long ball forward, and so you got to be able to deal with that and be aggressive with that, and then our counter pressing. So when you don't, then they had a few breakaways and they get the goal. thankfully we responded well. Scored a good goal from winning the header. Where while she wins the header, we tidy up the game and settle it, and then we can break forward. Good for Nick to get his goal, but there's no doubt. My experience is here. I always expect to come here and win with Celtic, and sadly, we weren't able to do that.
Well, we weren't able to do that. It's another game that we've dropped points, another game that we've drawn. Drawn games historically does have an effect on winning the league. And if we think back to since we're going to talk about 30 years ago and what happened at Celtic, you can talk about the Tommy Burns era. Tommy Burns era, he pretty much drew too many games. The one and only season that we finished 1 point behind them. And it was difficult. Brendan Rodgers looks despondent, disjointed. He looks a little bit fed up. I've got one thing that I need to say, that although he wasn't interviewed by any of the screen media, he wasn't interviewed by the television, Sky, he wasn't interviewed by Celtic TV, is Joe Hart. And Joe Hart decided that it'd be good to talk to the paper media, the print media. The print media on his way to Celtic Park yesterday, and Joe Hart says that they've taken on board. Joe Hart reacts to Celtic board protest as Pittodrie message proves impossible to ignore. Joe Hart's old enough and experienced enough to know that when you're asked about things like that in football, your immediate response is, "Look, I just want to talk about the football. I'm paid to play football. I want to talk about the football. Whatever happens outside, is not for me to comment." And Joe Hart's, it's not the first time that Joe Hart's done this season. It's not the first time that he's done it when he's been down in England. And I don't think that a player should be really talking about anything that's going on off the pitch. Because unless they're doing the business 110% on the pitch, and you could say, yeah, if it wasn't for Joe Hart yesterday, we would have been beaten by more goals. If it wasn't for Joe Hart, throughout various points of the season, we maybe wouldn't have dropped points. And that's all I'm going to say on that. That's all I'm going to say on that. When you look at some of the headlines out there, there is absolute nonsense that you would expect when Celtic drop points. Brendan Rodgers sends message to Celtic board as who cares? It is going to be what it's going to be. I have a nose for Celtic trouble. As pungent problems, the detonator for a short explosion is another headline. When you look at the headlines this morning, just stay away from the papers, because the negativity that's going around the Celtic support is enough to put anyone off their breakfast. The negativity that's going to amass around the Scottish media towards Celtic over the next week is going to hit DEFCON 5. Yes, Brendan Rodgers needs to get things right, Brendan Rodgers and the players. But where do we go as a fan base? We need to back the team, back the team. One of the bright sparks of yesterday was obviously the fact that Nico Kuhn managed to get his debut for Celtic, and he scored, and I thought that he had quite a good game. He was a winger that managed to get past players, which our wingers don't seem to be doing just now. And I think that there's too many players on our team that are too comfortable with the fact that they can walk straight into the team. One being Lil Labada, who doesn't seem to have the skills within his skill set as a player to be able to dribble past a player. Or try and take a player on. Nico Kuhn comes onto the pitch and does it with ease. And he scores a goal. Yes, he did score a goal. And he was asked about the performance of the team yesterday.
Yeah, of course, we wanted to win and get the 3 points. I think we had a couple of chances in the first half already. And yeah, we didn't defend that well, because they had too many chances, I think, especially in the second half.
Too many. That's interesting.
Then, of course, we want to get the second goal, so we had to open a little bit. But yeah, overall, we're a little bit disappointed with not getting the 3 points.
Disappointed with not getting the 3 points, says Nico. As Celtic fans are all disappointed. I'm just glad that it is away games, because let's face it, the atmosphere back at Celtic Park just now isn't the best, and it's not what the fans or the team need. The fans really need to, and they will do in the next games. They'll get behind the team as long as this team starts performing. If this team keeps on putting in performances like this, it's not going to be long before they start asking questions. I mean, there are already people asking questions of the manager. Is that fair on the manager? It's hard. Could you imagine walking into your own job and trying to do your own job with one hand tied behind your back? Because that's what it feels like it was happening at Celtic just now. It does feel like Brendan Rodgers has had his hand tied behind his back. He spoke in length on Friday, or Thursday or Friday, about the fact that he now understands the Celtic model a bit better after this transfer window. What does that say to the conversation that you had with our illustrious owner, who everyone said Celtic's not important to him? He's away playing golf last week. What does that say to the conversation that him and Brendan had when he phoned Brendan and says, "Look, Brendan, I want you to come back to Celtic. I want you to come back to Celtic." When Peter Lawwell had just walked back in the building just about a year ago. So, and I am going to have a dig at Peter Lawwell, because the 2 years that Peter Lawwell wasn't directly in the building, he was still in the background. He was still in the background. Let's not lie about it. But since Peter has came in last January, we've taken a step backwards. You can guarantee if that club across the city or any other club in Scotland had the money that we had in the bank, they would have went out and pushed the boat out and brought in Mavovsky from Aberdeen, who scored a fantastic goal against us yesterday. And then they would have also went out and bought the guy for Hearts, just to win the league. Just to win the league. They would have done that just to win the league, to make sure that they won the league and they get into the Champions League. And that's something that Celtic are reluctant to do. They're reluctant to just push that boat out just that little bit, because they think that they have a manager and they think they have a squad, and they think that, well, they're looking at the Hearts lad and they're like, well, we're not going to make much money off him. And then how really good can we get someone cheaper that's just as good as the Aberdeen player? And that's the way that this board thinks, and that's the way that Peter Lawwell and his son thinks. So if you're going to blame anyone today, if you're going to blame anyone for the state that Celtic are currently in, let's go back to the 1990s and be a little bit brave, a bit like the people who started the Celts for Change. And let's not focus on the team and the manager, because there's only so much that a team and manager can do. Yes, results should be better, but if we're not going to go out and spend the kind of money that we're expecting our club to do, and it's not vast amounts of money. You're talking about £6 million a player. It's not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money at all, especially when you've got the kind of money that we've got in the bank. Anyway, on that note, it is Sunday. There will be a live later on this afternoon, probably at 6 p.m. Celtic Park time, or maybe 5 p.m. It's a Sunday. We'll wait and see. And on that note, have a fantastic day, Celtic fans. We're still top of the league. That's all that matters today. Tuesday might be a different word. If they win with more than 2 goals, they will be top of the league. Is that devastating? On a personal note, it's devastating. On a fan base, it's devastating, because you've got the bragging rights of being top of the league, and they'll think that they're in the ascendancy. But there is a lot of football to be played. They haven't managed to beat us this season, and I don't think they will. We do turn up for the big games. No, we didn't against Aberdeen yesterday. Oops.